So I thought I would talk about a couple of other things that get in the way of our wishing others to have happiness and the causes of happiness. So one of these is prejudice. So in one way, you can see attachment and aversion to different people as a form of prejudice. But here I'm talking more about how we stereotype people or how we judge and categorize people based on, some superficial quality, such as their race or ethnicity or gender or socioeconomic class or social status or sexual orientation or income or you name it. I mean, we all know how we judge and evaluate people based on these kinds of conceptions about who they are. And then we put them in categories, and we have opinions about these different categories that we're sure are correct. And so these kinds of opinions, the category making and the opinions, really prevent us from connecting to other people and wanting them to have happiness and the causes of happiness. So clearly it hinders our relationship with people who we put in categories that we say are inferior, and we don't respect those categories. Difficult to want those people to have happiness and its causes, because we don't respect them as living beings. And then the people who we do respect, because we've put them in categories that we think are fantastic, then again we develop unrealistic expectations of them and how they're going to be and who they are. And I don't know about you, but I find it very interesting how, how I was taught to put people in certain categories, and that people in this category, they're good people. And then you get to know them, and they have the same problems as everybody else. And they have the same moral or ethical dilemmas as everybody else. And, you were taught that people who were like this were good people, and society may even hold that too, but then you come to see that that's all just make-believe. Okay. Have you had that happen to you? Yeah? Just, you may have been taught by your parents or society or whoever, that people maybe who do certain jobs, or people of certain religions, or people of certain educational backgrounds, or people, these are good people, and you can trust them more than you can trust other people. But then, when you get involved with those people, you see that actually they're not perfect, and they're, they don't do everything. They aren't what your parents taught you they were. Put it that way. Yeah, so that can be rather disillusioning. And then, of course, our parents or society may have taught us other people are kind of, to be disrespected because they're like this, that, and the other thing. And sometimes as a result, we don't even get to know those people. So we hang on to those prejudices simply because, we what's the word? Circumscribe, yeah, our environment and who we're going to relate to. So we don't even meet those people, and there's no chance for our stereotypes to be proven wrong. And then sometimes we do go out and we stretch our borders and we meet those people and see how wrong our stereotypes are. Or sometimes you meet somebody that is like the stereotype in that group, even though everybody else in the group isn't. But you meet one person who is. Okay? But, you know, all this way that we have of categorizing people, you know, can, you know, in one way you can say, well, it gives us some information. We look at external things. It gives us some information about people. Maybe, but it also gives us some misinformation about people because the stereotypes often are very wrong, aren't they? Yeah. In fact, most of the time they're very wrong. So that gets in the way from really seeing them as people with feelings and really wanting them to have happiness in the causes. Because when we categorize people like that, we just tend to dismiss whole groups of people as not worth thinking about. Yeah. And so I was just looking, because we got that, it was Time or Newsweek, whatever weekly magazine we get here. And they put the Baltimore situation on the cover. And the Nepal situation on the inside. And I thought, the Nepal situation should go on the cover, you know? But for most people in America, what's happening here with what they know about kind of grabs them much more than people on the other side of the world who they just kind of dismiss because this is a backward country anyway, so who cares? I happen to live in Nepal for a while, so I care, you know, and I don't see it in the same way that many other Americans do. But, you know, kind of what they choose to even put on the cover shows what we think of as more valuable. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Any points to be discussed about this? Do you have any reflections or comments about this part before I go on to the next part? So then your world is just limited to your small town. Yeah. Kind of like the African Americans are getting the attention and the Native Americans, everybody just, yeah, ignores or whatever. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. What is it, a Buddhist group? Ah, but the Buddhist group was mostly African Americans and Native Americans? Interesting. Yeah. Huh. Wow. Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. So that this kind of thing is something to really pay attention to in our mind, because a lot of times this categorization, we aren't even aware of it. Yeah. But we just look at people and then instantly brand them as this, that, or the other thing. And not just by race and ethnicity and religion, but it could be according to, you know, the color of their eyes, or their height, or their weight, or who knows what. Yeah. But we brand and categorize and think we know. Okay. Then the other thing I was thinking that gets in the way of our having love for sentient beings is nitpicking. Yeah. Or another way to put it, our judgmental mind. Yeah. Our judgmental mind that looks at people and I don't like this and I don't like this and why are they doing that? And so many of these things that we're criticizing people for are nitpicking things. Of course, we criticize them for big things too, but the big things usually aren't so many, but the little things, oh, there's so many of them we don't like. Yeah, and we really go to town nitpicking. Of course, we think those little things are big things. Yeah, and we blow them up and get very attached to them, and it becomes quite a big deal in our mind. I always like to use the example of how people put the cups in the cupboard, whether you put them right upside down or right side up. And I like this example. How many of you put your cups upside down? And how many of you put them right side up? Do you see how we're very clear about this, aren't we? Yeah. You know, is there anybody who isn't clear, who changes how you put your cups in the cupboard? One person. Yeah. But we have our way, you know, and we have our reason, and the reason is the same for both groups. Yeah. The people who put the cups upside down do so to keep the cups clean, because if they're right side up, dirt comes in them. The people who keep the cups right side up do so to keep the cups clean, because if you put them upside down, that where you're putting them may be dirty, and it makes the cup dirty. Okay, so they both have the same reason for what they do, but they do opposite things. Yeah. If you're an upside down person and you live with a right side up person, yeah, you're going to have some problems because yeah, because people get very attached to how they put the cups in the cupboard. And somebody who doesn't do it like you do does it wrong. And they're unsanitary. They don't care about health. And they should be reported to the health department. Okay? And we will harp on them no end until they change their way of putting the cups in the cupboard. Or they will harp on us no end until we change our way. Okay. Is it of earth-shaking importance how the cups go in the cupboard? So you see how it becomes so important that, you know, then we're going to have a big conflict about it and get very attached to our opinion. Okay. So this is a small thing, but if we look, there's so many examples. Yeah. Do you put your shoes neatly against the wall? Yeah. Or do you just take them off and leave them wherever? And I can tell you what kind of Buddhism people practice according to how they put their shoes. And what we're trying to do here at the Abbey is change that, and it's really hard work. Yeah. Tibetans if you practice Zen Buddhism, your shoes not only are the right color, everybody has the same color, black, but they are lined up one next to the other, like this, all facing the same direction, no space between them. Okay, if you practice Chinese Buddhism, same way, in a straight line, exactly like that. If you practice Tibetan Buddhism, your shoes are wherever. Yeah. And you try and get people to line their shoes up so that more people's shoes can fit in the row, so that people don't trip over other people's shoes. It is so difficult. Yeah. It's what we try and do at the Abbey, you know, I mean. Okay. So, you know, and then again, it becomes a great importance, you know, how you stack your shoes. So we not only tell people how to stack their shoes, but we link it to this illustrates how your mind works. Which it does to some extent, you know. But let's not get carried away about it. Okay? But we can see, you know, in your workplace, how do you feel about people who, at the coffee, coffee thing, if they don't clean up? Yeah? If there's just a little bit of coffee that's spilled, or a little bit of sugar that's spilled, you know, we will really get upset about how people do that. Now, all the good work they do, out the window. They are inconsiderate, rude, and should be fired because of, you know, their relationship with the area around the coffee machine. Okay, but what I'm getting at is how much mental energy we put into being picky. Yeah? We only have a limited amount of time on this planet, and it would be interesting to compute how much of it we spend being picky and criticizing people over small things. Yeah? And then getting attached to that and making it into a big issue. Yeah, of course, for us, we're not making it into a big issue. It is. It's really of earth-shaking importance that somebody used the same knife to put peanut butter on their sandwich and then used the peanut butter knife and stuck it in the jelly jar. These people, you know, and leaving little bits of peanut butter in the jelly jar.
We're going to expect tomorrow morning.
Yeah, they are so inconsiderate. It makes the jelly dirty. It makes you think that there's mold growing on the jelly. For people who are allergic to nuts, it contaminates the jelly jar. And then the people who then take the knife from the jelly jar and put it back in the peanut butter. Oh my God. So that you have little red bits all over your peanut butter. You know, and then the person who, you know, takes the peanut butter gets jelly whether they want it or not. And this, of course, is going to cause them incredible suffering if they get jelly when they don't want it. Yeah. Yeah, right? Mm-hmm. So, so then we have to make sure to find out who in the community did this. Yeah, because this just is not acceptable behavior, you know. We have a photograph of it. Yeah, we haven't had a discussion about this yet. Have you noticed? Yeah. I've been waiting for this to come as an issue at a stand-up meeting so that we can, as a community, discuss it for 2 hours. You know.
One of the hindrances, more than half the community does it, so then we probably.
But I don't like when other people do it, even though I do it. I'm allowed to do it because who wants to make more knives dirty? But I really don't like looking in a jelly jar that has peanut butter in it. Did your mother let you do that? Jenny, I don't think she would. Never. Okay. So, this mind that's constantly picking at things, constantly judging. Yeah, we don't like this. We don't like that. Why do people do this? Why do people do that? Why don't they do it this way? Why don't they do it that way? That mind, we spend a lot of time and energy on it. And it not only does it consume the time that we could be focusing on developing love for sentient beings, but it also actively prevents us from caring about sentient beings. Because these people who do things differently than we are just, how can you care about them? They're so uncouth. Yeah, right? So we form these judgments, then, how can we say, may you be well and happy, you peanut butter knife putter in the jelly jar person. Oh, if I wish that person to be well and happy, that means they would always do that. Yeah. Yeah, permanent, definitely. Yeah. Okay. So it's interesting to reflect and look in our lives and see, do a little bit of seeing about what we happen to pick at. Yeah, and how we blow these things up. And more specifically, how that way of thinking creates an obstacle for us opening our hearts to others. Yeah. The same thing can be said about people who don't make their bed, except this is really serious business. Yeah. Especially if you live in a monastery. You can't just live in a monastery and not make your bed. Yeah. All the nuns make their beds. The monks, I don't know. Yeah, I walked in the monks' dormitory last summer and I nearly fainted. Yeah. So that's why, Brian, you're in charge of it. But you can just do the men in general, get them to make their beds, okay? Yeah. Yeah, does he make his bed? Yeah, I think.
Get messy again today.
Okay, yeah, I know you don't. I stayed at your parents' house one time, remember? Yeah.
So nice having you there. Nice to see my bed.
Yeah. So, how we, again, create barriers and borders to opening our heart. Okay. Any questions or comments about this? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting to look into and really watch, what's the source of our wanting to control everything. Yeah. And I think it has a lot to do. I know for me, it has a lot to do with what my responsibility is vis-a-vis a certain place or group. Yeah. So here at the Abbey, I feel much more need to comment on things and, voice things that I think are not going so well, because that's kind of my job. And I don't want things to kind of fall apart. Sometimes it's like, oh, they're all going to fall apart if people do X, Y, Z, which of course they won't, but, almost. Um, yeah, but that's kind of my job. Whereas I remember sometimes when I go to other people's monasteries for conferences or whatever, and there's equipment just left lying around, or there's stuff left out that isn't put away, or there's things that are getting wasted, I just let it be. I don't say anything because it's not my community, yeah, and it would seem critical to the people there. But I remember when I was staying at the Thai monastery, there was a bunch of garbage kind of in one area, and I could have cleaned it up. It wouldn't have hurt me to clean it up, and it, wouldn't have hurt anybody else if I cleaned it up. But I just thought, I don't have to worry about it. Not mine. If they don't mind garbage in their community, then I won't mind the garbage in their community either, which is not necessarily such a good thing for me to think like that. On the other hand, sometimes as a guest, if you go and start cleaning people's things out, they get offended. Yeah, because you weren't supposed to notice that it was a mess. Yeah, so you kind of have to see what the thing is. But yeah, sometimes this wanting to control is so that we feel, it's out of fear, because any little bit of unpredictability makes us nervous. We want something predictable, secure, boxed in, and so we, try and control the environment a lot. Yeah, yeah. Isn't that interesting how, when we aren't peaceful for ourselves, then these small things become huge. Yeah. Whereas when we're more peaceful inside of ourselves, it's not such a big deal. Yeah. So why is that? Is it just the internal turbulence getting spilled out? Not being happy with ourselves, being critical of ourselves, and then, turning that outside to everybody around us, that they also need to improve, whether they know it or not. Yeah. So when people judge you, you get angry. Yeah. Why do you get angry? Yeah. It's an interesting thing on these kinds of things to ask ourselves, why do I get angry? And to really do some research on that. Why do I get angry? Yeah. Okay. Is it because, I'm afraid they won't like me? Or is it afraid I'm going to lose my job? Is there fear there? Or, what is it really? Why, this kind of situation happens, but why do I need to get angry at it? Or, even if it's the kind of thing, is it something where I can compromise and do it half my way and half their way to pacify the situation? Yeah. So it sounds like it's an issue of your own autonomy, that you feel like your autonomy is being threatened in some way or another. Yeah. So it's interesting why to ask yourself, why is that an autonomy issue for me? And are they really threatening my autonomy? Or, what's going on? What is my button in the situation? Yeah. It's always good, because if we can figure out what our button is, then we can figure out sometimes how to pacify our own mind. Yeah. By the way, Sarah, you know how you swept the floor the other day? Yeah. I'm not sure if it's stronger in some cultures or if it's just that it's expressed differently in different cultures. Yeah. In this country, the judgmental mind, people are quite blunt, In Asia, I think there's a good bit of judgmental mind, but you kind of, you work it a bit. Yeah. But the judgmental mind's there. It's just you don't, in Chinese culture, kind of say it right out, because that would be rude. Yeah, that would be rude. Or I found when I was living in Singapore that lots of times people would phrase things as a question when it was an order. Yeah. Or the decision had been made, but I was asked a question about it. And I remember one time in particular, I was walking with a friend, and she said, "Shall we cross, do you want to cross the street?" Yeah, do you want to cross the street? And I was going to say no, but before I could say no, she was halfway across the street. Yeah, and it made me realize, it's not polite to say we're crossing the street. It's you put it as a question, but then you do it, and the other person comes along with you. Yeah. One thing I have found is, in Singapore, when I teach there, almost everybody complains about their boss. I mean, one thing after another thing, they all complain about their boss. Here, people don't complain about their bosses nearly as much. Yeah. And I don't know, maybe people here just tell their boss off. Yeah. But they don't complain about their bosses as much. Whereas Singapore, oh my goodness. To the point where when I talk about compassion, I tell them to have compassion for their bosses, Because if I had to work with people, if you're in a position where you have to manage people and all those people did was complain about you and talk behind your back, then you need some compassion. Of course, maybe the bosses are as bad as the employees say. Okay. So anyway, we just talked about some things to look at in ourselves that prevent us from generating love for others, okay? So good to do a little bit of an inventory about this and see those habits and try and counteract them. When we do the meditation on love, there's not a lot of instruction to do it. Basically, you're wishing someone well. Sometimes you can do it where you recite a little formula. May you be well and happy. May you be free of, hostility. May you, I forget the whole formula like that because I don't tend to do it with a formula. But there's ways of doing it where you recite something like that and you just contemplate that as you recite it. I personally prefer to think of my own way and to say it to myself in my own words. Okay, wishing somebody, you start out with basic things, good health and friendship and, food and clothes and these kinds of things. But then to really think about what happiness is and what are we really wishing people. Are you wishing everybody to have a red hot sports car at age 45? Is this the source of happiness? And you wish that for everybody. Are we wishing that everybody has their own computer or cell phone? Is that going, just to think about what is it that we're wishing for people and what effect will, if they could have what we were wishing for them, what effect would it have on them? And not just sticking with material things, they have these material things, but thinking about health and long life, the state of the body, and then also wishing them to have a happy mind. Yeah, so a mind that is free of animosity, free of jealousy, free of nitpicking, free of prejudice. Yeah, because these kinds of mental qualities cause so much suffering in somebody's life. Yeah, and are we, and then to wish them to have all the good conditions for Dharma practice. Yeah, whether it's somebody who practices the Dharma and values the Dharma or not, it's nice to wish them to have all these circumstances, and to wish that they find meaning and purpose in the Buddha's teachings, so that they can, use the teachings to make their minds happy and make their minds peaceful. Yeah, and then thinking about, wishing that they have teachers suitable to their own disposition, and hoping they have Dharma friends, and hoping they have books and, whatever they need for their Dharma practice. And wishing them to have an open mind, that can take the teachings in, that's receptive to the teachings. Okay, so you can think for yourself what kind of things you wish people to have, be they external possessions, or internal qualities, or, spiritual qualities, different situations or circumstances. And you wish that for other people, and imagine them having that. Yeah, it's quite wonderful when you can think of some of the people who who are stuck in some area of their life, and you imagine them not being stuck in that. Yeah, you imagine them actually being at peace with that area of their life and not stuck in that particular way of thinking. Yeah, it's quite nice, I do this especially like if it's somebody I'm having difficulty with. Yeah, what they're doing I don't like for whatever reason. Then if I do the meditation on love, focusing on them, and thinking about them having a peaceful mind. May they have a peaceful mind. May they have a receptive mind. May they have a mind that's calm, that can hear feedback without blowing up. May they, feel loved. May they feel appreciated. Whatever it is, And then imagining how that person would be if they had whatever those needs were met. And that's really rather lovely to do, to imagine people like that, because it helps us see that people can change, that they aren't stuck in some they may be stuck in their own mind right now, but they're not permanently some kind of limited person who can never change. And so some of the people who are quite unhappy, and their unhappiness makes you unhappy, when you can imagine them being relaxed and happy, then it relaxes your own mind too. Because lots of times if we're with somebody who's chronically unhappy, chronically complaining, it affects us. Yeah? And so to think of those people, really wishing them well and imagining them being happy, it's quite nice as a good wish towards them and as a way of helping to calm our own mind. Okay? There's different ways to do the meditation on love. In the Theravada system, they start you out with, they say, think of somebody that you respect, not somebody you're attached to. Yeah, and especially don't start with somebody you're sexually attracted to. Yeah, they tell a story about, some man started meditating on love for his wife, and of course the love got mixed up with the sexual attachment, and she was in the next room, and instead of meditating, he was banging on the wall trying to get to her. I don't know if it's a true story or not, but, you get the point. Yeah, don't do that. Yeah, but, to start with somebody that you respect, but not somebody who you have a lot of emotional attachment to or sexual, attraction to. Yeah, because that, again, that kind of thing can interfere with really wishing them to be well and happy. So start with that, and then after that, go to people that maybe are close relatives. After that, go to strangers. After that, go to people that you don't get along with. Okay. Some people say that they've discovered that for Westerners, just diving into the meditation on love in that way is very difficult for them because they don't like themselves very much. And so if you don't like yourself very much, then it's very hard to generate love for other people. So they then say, start out with generating love for yourself and wishing love, wishing happiness and so forth for yourself. Yeah. So if you have that kind of difficulty, do that and really train your mind to wish yourself well. Of course, you don't spend the whole meditation just on yourself, okay? Yeah, because that could very easily turn into self-indulgence, couldn't it? Yeah, so you may start wishing yourself well, but then you go on to, other people. So someone had the question, well, in terms of if I go to this thing of with my teacher, and one of the things is, may this person be free of hostility. Well, I don't like to think of my teacher even as having hostility. So what do I do with that? So it could be here that it's not necessarily your spiritual teacher. It could be that it's another kind of teacher that you have. And also, in this, the way of doing this meditation in the Pali tradition, you don't assume that anybody is free of faults. And there's, you know that your teacher may have some faults and so on. So, but you don't dwell on those. Yeah. So you just, may they be free of animosity, but may they also have all these other good circumstances, internal and external. Okay. Yeah, Yeah, so you start with that, but not the whole meditation session. Okay, yeah. Yeah. In the Tibetan tradition, before you meditate on love, you always do the equanimity meditation. So it starts a little bit different. In the Theravada way, they call it breaking down the barriers. You do that after or as you're generating love. But in the Tibetan style, you meditate on equanimity first, and try and get rid of the attachment and the aversion. Okay, because the goal in the Tibetan way of doing it is to feel love and compassion for everybody equally. Yeah, without favoring some and discriminating against others. So to extend love that way or compassion that way or whatever, then we have to meditate on equanimity. And equanimity is a very powerful meditation. It really puts in our face how much we discriminate people and how much we put them in different categories, in different boxes, how much actually we create the boxes. Yeah, because we think that people are friends, enemies, and strangers from their own side. But in actual fact, they're just human beings, and we're the ones who create the categories of friend, enemy, and stranger, and we're the ones who create the criteria for putting people in these different categories. Yeah. So friend, enemy, and stranger is a product of our own mental fabrication. Because if somebody is good to me, then they must be a wonderful person. Yeah. If they're good to somebody I don't like, then they're an awful person. So we think we're seeing people objectively for who they are. Oh, this person has the quality of being very kind. Why do you like this person? Oh, because they're so kind. But it's because they're so kind to me. Because if they were so kind to this other person who I couldn't stand, I wouldn't see them as being kind, because I would put them in the camp with my enemy, siding with my enemy. Okay? So we think we're seeing people for the qualities they have objectively, but we're not. We're discriminating those qualities depending on how they display those qualities to us. Yeah, so this becomes problematic. Yeah, if somebody is very critical, one of these judgmental, critical people, if they're critical towards me, then they're really, can't stand them. But if they're critical towards somebody else I don't like, then I can sit and talk with them all day because they agree with my ideas. And, they're very smart because they criticize the same person I criticize. Okay? So this is due to our kind of nonsensical or self-centered mind. Now, it's not due to objective qualities from the side of the other people. If we were smart when we met somebody who was judgmental and critical towards our enemy, instead of befriending those person thinking that they're so fantastic as they hate the same person we hate, we should realize that if this person talks behind the back of that person, they're going to also talk behind my back. Yeah. So maybe I should be careful of what I say around them. Okay? Are you getting what I mean? It's kind of like sometimes people come to me and it's like, you know, I've been having an affair with a married man, and, you know, I love him, but his wife is really being creepy. And yeah, and I'm going, you like this married man who's lying to his wife? Don't you realize he's going to lie to you too? You know, you love him even though he's, you know, not being very kind to his wife, and you think that he's going to be kind to you? Yeah, sometimes I say that, sometimes I don't. But it's true, isn't it? Yeah. If somebody acts that way towards somebody else, even if it's somebody else who you're in competition with or somebody you don't like, they're going to act that way with you too. Oh, everybody looks very unhappy now. True or not true? It's true, isn't it? Yeah, it's true. But somehow we think, oh, it's going to be different for me. Yeah. So, anyway, you know, the friend, enemy, and stranger, and all of this stuff is out of our creation. And we create the criteria, and then we put people in these different categories, and we think that's who they really are. All my friends are good people. All my enemies stink. Yeah, then life becomes very simple. Yeah, I hang around these people. I don't talk to those people. Yeah, but actually, life is not quite so simple, because sometimes the people you think are so wonderful start doing the things that your enemies do, like point out your faults. You know, and somebody who points out my faults cannot remain a friend. Yeah, I don't care if I have faults or not. You aren't supposed to notice them. And if you do, you're not supposed to point them out. And if you do point them out, you're going in the enemy category. Yeah, because I cannot endure being criticized. Even for things that I've blown, you know. Even for things that are true, yeah, I don't want them pointed out. Yeah, anybody else like that here? Yeah. Okay, but do you see how totally subjective and stupid that is? No, because sometimes the people who care about us the most are the people who care enough to point out our mistakes. Yeah, whereas people who want something out of us will flatter us no end, and we just lap it up thinking they're great. Yeah, and then we wonder afterwards how we got into this crazy relationship with somebody we can't trust. Well, it's because we're suckers for flattery. But who likes to think I'm a sucker for flattery? It's much easier to say that guy's a jerk. Okay, so yeah. So to even out these kind of boxes that we put people in, I found that, you know, in traveling, traveling is a very good way to break down these kind of boxes and categories we put people in, because when you travel, you have to depend on other people. Yeah, and they may not, you know, I mean, I'm usually alone when I travel. Very seldom I'm with somebody else. And so, you know, you just have to, you befriend whoever is there. And I remember traveling in India especially, you know, anybody who is a foreigner, you're automatically friends with that person. And you trust them, and you watch their stuff, and they watch your stuff, because that's the way, everybody helps everybody else. So it sometimes may happen that somebody who you don't like, if you met them in a different situation where you really needed to rely on them, all of a sudden they would be a friend. And you would see good qualities in them, and you would trust them. Okay, so it's good to see these kinds of things and break down some of those boxes, and to notice when the mind is judging other people, and try and replace it with a feeling of kindness, with wishing somebody well, instead of with judgment and criticism. Yeah. So I find traveling, again, airplanes are a good opportunity to do this. Yeah. Interesting. I can tell you, I just got done from a trip. I can tell you different people I sat next to and what I had to do to kind of have a peaceful mind. Yeah, I was on one flight. I was in the aisle seat. The guy sitting in the middle seat weighed maybe 350 pounds. He's sitting in the middle seat. Well, part of him is in the middle seat. And the rest of him is flowing over into my seat and the seat on the other side. And so when I realized I was going to have to sit next to him, my first feeling was, oh God, not again. The only thing worse than that is me being in the middle seat between two people who are 300 pounds, which has happened before. Yeah. But then I realized, on the flight, he was sitting most of the flight like this. And I realized, wow, he was being considerate, because he realized he was big, he realized he was overflowing his seat, and he was trying to minimize it. And I thought, that was really consideration on his part. And I have to appreciate that consideration, because I've sat next to other people who weren't considerate like that, but he was, and I really had to respect and appreciate that. So just things like this to even out your mind. On the trip home, I was again on the aisle seat, and the two women next to me, they were strangers, but they started talking. And, they were talking about hair and nails and, these kinds of things that I'm really very interested in. Yeah. And so just to have a kind mind instead of thinking, shut up, please. But, I just kind of read what I was reading and did that, and just thought, okay, if that makes them happy, may they be happy, but may they also come to see other things in life that that they can apply their human intelligence to, which is better than sitting next to people and being angry. Yeah, to try and change the mind, to have some kind of loving thought about them. Okay, so listening to people who, listening to unpleasant sounds. Yeah? That's what it boils down to. Listening to unpleasant sounds, listening to ideas or, events that we don't like, where we get maybe a little bit self-righteous about, I don't approve. You're my friend. How can any of my friends sleep with married men? then we have to look a little bit at our self-righteousness, in there. But yeah, how to manage when you're hearing unpleasant sounds, or people being racist or whatever it is, and not reacting, but maintaining love for that person. And one thing that's really helped me in that regard is I did a lot of practice with George W. He was a meditation object for 8 years. And sometimes, I would just get really aggravated, but then I would think, if I grew up the son of George Sr. and Barbara in an oil-rich family in Texas. It's one of the states I never want to live in. Texas, Arizona. The politics in Arizona, they're really too much for me, So, but if I grew up in George W.'s family, in his social network, where my daddy could get me into Yale even though I had lousy grades, and, this was the kind of way I was brought up, then I might turn out like him. So I had to kind of say, he's a conditioned phenomena. It's not like he's inherently I just came back from Mexico, and my Spanish is not very good, but one word I never forget is baboso. And baboso means jerk. Okay? So, I almost said baboso there. But anyway, but just to think that he's not some kind of fixed thing, and he's a conditioned phenomena. And, he was conditioned by his environment, and if I had been brought up in that environment, I may have turned out similarly, which some other people would have thought, oh, that's good. You'd be a lot better than you are now, because they don't like the way I am now. Okay? But, that helped me kind of get over the judgment, around him. And what you were saying, just, hearing ideas that I don't agree with, and reminding myself that it is a free world and that people are entitled to their own opinions, even if they're wrong. No, but just, everybody's entitled to think how they want to think, and it's, I have to accept that, and I have to see their own goodness, even though I don't agree with their politics or their this or their that. Because basically, if every time somebody said something if we started out in a big universe with all living beings, but any time somebody did something we didn't like, we tossed them out of our universe. Pretty soon, we're going to be sitting there with ourselves, alone.
Do we get to toss ourselves out when we don't like ourselves?
Yeah, that becomes problematic because sometimes we really don't like ourselves, too. Yeah.